All right, let's talk about something so dry it makes the Sahara Desert look like a water park: trade policy. Specifically, the trade policies of former President Donald Trump, a man who once claimed he could negotiate trade deals better than anyone, ever. Today we're diving into the complexities of former President Donald Trump's trade policies, particularly his use of tariffs. Let's break it down. We're going to unpack this whole tariff tango and try to figure out if it was a brilliant strategy or just a chaotic mess. From the get-go, Trump made it clear that his trade policy revolved around a central theme: America first. It was a slogan, a rallying cry, and some might argue a slightly aggressive cuddle with protectionism. See, Trump believed that other countries, and I mean all those other countries, were taking advantage of the US in trade deals. China, the EU, even our neighbors to the north. In Trump's eyes, they were all playing economic three-card Monty, and America was the sucker holding the losing hand. His solution? Tariffs, baby, those taxes on imported goods that are supposed to protect domestic industries. Think of it like this. If America's playing economic poker and other countries are holding all the aces, Trump just decided to flip the table and start hitting everyone with a tariff hammer. Subtle? No. Effective? Well, that's where things get a little murky. Trump slapped tariffs on goods from China, from the EU, even on close allies like Canada and Mexico. He justified it all in the name of protecting American jobs and industries, particularly in the steel and aluminum sectors. Remember when he slapped a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% tariff on aluminum? Good times. The logic, at least according to the Trump administration, was that these tariffs would revive American manufacturing and protect national security. Because, nothing says national security like a slightly more expensive can of beer. Of course, slapping tariffs on everyone and their grandma wasn't exactly met with smiles and high fives around the world. Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs on American goods, kicking off a series of trade wars that left economists nervously adjusting their glasses and muttering things about unforeseen consequences. Let's talk specifics, shall we? Because when it comes to Trump's trade wars, the poster child was undoubtedly China. The Trump administration slapped tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, from electronics to clothing to solar panels. China predictably returned the favor, targeting American agricultural products like soybeans and pork. It was a full-blown trade war, and while both sides claimed victory at various points, the reality was far messier. Then there was the European Union, which Trump repeatedly accused of being worse than China on trade. He imposed tariffs on European steel and aluminum and threatened to do the same on cars, much to the chagrin of our European allies. And let's not forget about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement that Trump loved to hate. He called it the worst trade deal ever made and renegotiated it into the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Whether the new deal was actually better for American workers is still up for debate, but it certainly involved a lot of angry tweets and tense negotiations. The common thread running through all of this: Trump's unwavering belief that other countries were engaging in unfair trade practices, costing American jobs and hurting the economy. He railed against trade deficits, intellectual property theft, and currency manipulation, wielding tariffs as his weapon of choice to try and force other countries to play by his rules. Now, were Trump's tariffs a stroke of genius or a dumpster fire of economic proportions? Well, as with most things Trump, the answer is complicated and depends on who you ask. On the one hand, you had Trump's supporters who cheered him on every step of the way. They argued that tariffs were long overdue, a necessary correction to decades of bad trade deals that had shipped American jobs overseas. They pointed to industries like steel and manufacturing, where tariffs did seem to provide a temporary boost. And they applauded Trump for finally standing up to China and other countries that they believed had been taking advantage of the US for too long. On the other hand, you had the critics, and oh boy, were there critics, economists, business leaders, and even some members of Trump's own party, warned that tariffs were like shooting yourself in the foot while trying to kick someone else in the shin. They argued that tariffs would raise prices for consumers, hurt American businesses that relied on imports, and ultimately harm the economy. and they worried that Trump's aggressive approach to trade would alienate allies and damage America's reputation on the world stage. The reality, as usual, was somewhere in between these two extremes. Some industries benefited from tariffs, while others were hurt. The trade deficit with China actually increased under Trump, despite his tariffs. And while the economy continued to grow during his presidency, it's impossible to say for sure how much of that growth was due to his trade policies and how much was due to other factors. Here's the thing about Trump's approach to tariffs. It wasn't really about the tariffs themselves, it was about using tariffs as leverage, as a bargaining chip in his larger Make America Great Again agenda. Trump believed that by being unpredictable, by threatening to blow up the existing trade order, he could bully other countries into making concessions and striking deals that were more favorable to the US. And to be fair, there were times when this tactic seemed to work. The USMCA, for example, was renegotiated under the shadow of Trump's tariff threats. He also used the threat of tariffs to pressure the EU into making some concessions on agricultural trade. But the question remains, was this strategy sustainable in the long term? Critics argued that Trump's constant tariff threats created uncertainty in the global economy and damaged America's credibility as a reliable trading partner. They pointed out that while Trump might have enjoyed a few short-term victories, his approach was ultimately unsustainable and risked undermining the rules-based trading system that the US had spent decades building. So, was Trump's tariff tango a brilliant display of deal-making prowess or a chaotic stumble through the global economy? The jury's still out, but one thing's for sure. Trump's trade policies left a lasting impact on the world, one that will continue to be debated and analyzed for years to come. That's a wrap on Trump's trade policies and tariffs. What do you think? Were they a necessary recalibration or a disruptive force? Let us know in the comments below. Look, Trump's approach to trade was unconventional, to say the least. He wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, to use tariffs as a bludgeon rather than a scalpel, and while some might argue that he got results, others would say that he left a trail of economic debris in his wake. One thing's for certain. Understanding Trump's trade policies is crucial to understanding his presidency and his impact on the world stage. So, next time you hear someone talking about tariffs, remember this. It's not just about taxes on imported goods. It's about economics, politics, and the complex web of global trade that connects us all.